Hello, guys. Today's topic is irrigant. Okay, if you like the video, please do like, share, and subscribe. To come with irrigant, which we use in root canal while root canal instrumentation, we generally use hand or rotary instrumentation, and that is used to produce the shape. It is the irrigant that cleans the root canal system. So irrigants have a special significance while doing the biomechanical preparation. Irrigants not only are important for the removal of debris and dentinal chips produced during shaping and cleaning, but also are of critical importance in eradicating the intraradicular microbial infection. There are various irrigants which have been used all the years, like they have started with a stream of hot water discharged from an insulated syringe to the EDTA. Okay, but most important among them are sodium hypochlorite. Okay, sodium hypochlorite. Okay, don't go with my writing here. 5% chlorine. Okay, and then EDTA 17%, EDTA 17%, and chlorhexidine digluconate 2%. So among them, first we should know what are the ideal requirement of an endodontic irrigant. That is antimicrobial activity. Of course, it is used for that purpose only. Mechanically flushes out the debris from the root canal. It should be non-toxic and biocompatible in nature. Dissolves the necrotic and vital pulp tissues. Serves as a lubricant. Removes the smear layer, and it should have low surface tension. So basically, the important irrigants which we use generally are sodium hypochlorite, EDTA, chlorhexidine digluconate. First is sodium hypochlorite. It's a reducing agent. It's generally clear straw colored solution. So sodium hypochlorite is the most commonly used till nowadays because it has advantages and disadvantages also. So we will specifically talk about sodium hypochlorite now. It is containing about 5% of available chlorine. It is most widely used irrigating solution. So for sodium hypochlorite, there is specific mechanism of action. On ionization, it produces hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ion. And these are the main things which are responsible for antimicrobial activity of sodium hypochlorite. As we have discussed that an ideal irrigant should have antimicrobial activity. So how does sodium hypochlorite have that antimicrobial activity? It produces hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ion, and these are responsible for antimicrobial ability of the sodium hypochlorite. Destruction of the bacteria takes place in two phases, that is penetration of the sodium hypochlorite into the bacterial cell wall, then chemical combination with the protoplasm of bacterial cell and disruption of DNA synthesis. There are properties of the sodium hypochlorite, that is concentration. There should be specific concentration, and that varies actually, because on the basis of published data, 0.5 to 5.2% of sodium hypochlorite solution can be used as irrigant in the root canal. The effective concentration recommended is 5.2% sodium hypochlorite, and 2.5% sodium hypochlorite is commonly used concentration, but the recommended one is 5.2% only. 2.5% is commonly employed concentration, as it decreases the potential for toxicity while maintaining some tissue dissolving and antimicrobial activity. And according to Tora Benezet et al., during instrumentation, 1.3% solution of sodium hypochlorite is beneficial as a working solution. So basically, it differs according to and the recommended is 5.25%, but according to Tora Benezet et al., it is only 1.3%. But standard, we should remember 5.2% of sodium hypochlorite solution as an irrigant. This is all about concentration. Then about tissue dissolution ability. Sodium hypochlorite completely dissolves an entire pulp in 20 minutes to 2 hours, whereas the next most effective solution requires at least 24 hours to accomplish the result. Although the solvent action of sodium hypochlorite on the tissue has been confirmed, some of them have found sodium hypochlorite is less effective in narrow root canals compared to the wide ones. So then there is a way of increasing the efficacy of sodium hypochlorite, and there are 3 ways of increasing the efficacy. How can we increase the efficacy? So for increasing the efficacy, what we have to do? Increasing the volume of irrigant used. For example, if we are using 1 ml or 2 ml, there is a difference in efficacy. If we are increasing the volume of irrigant, then the efficacy will be increased. Increasing the duration of irrigation. If we are using it for 1 minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, by increasing the duration of irrigant, we can increase the efficacy. Warming the irrigant increases the effectiveness. This can be done with the help of chairside irrigant warming devices. Okay. Then comes the drawbacks of sodium hypochlorite: cytotoxicity and caustic effects on the healthy periradicular tissues, on inadvertent extrusion during the irrigating procedure. Sometimes if we are using the irrigant, then it passes beyond the periradicular tissue, or it enters the periradicular area where it can damage the cells there. So the sodium hypochlorite has a disadvantage of destroying the periradicular tissues if inadvertent pushing with the use of a injection needle is done. So inadvertent pushing of the sodium hypochlorite should not be there, otherwise it has a caustic effect. So if we use the lower concentration, 0.5 to 1% or 2.5% sodium hypochlorite, then the accident can be lessened. But as we have said that in efficacy and the side effects should be kept an eye, because both of them are important. It should be efficacious, but but it should not cause any side effect on the periradicular tissues also. So there should be a balance check. And next disadvantage is it does not remove the inorganic component of endodontic smear layer. It has an unpleasant taste. Okay. The solution should be kept in a cool place away from the sunlight. Next comes the 17% EDTA. Okay. This is another irrigant which is latest one as compared to sodium hypochlorite. It was introduced into the endodontic practice by Nigard Ostby. 17% EDTA is relatively non-toxic and only slightly irritating in weak solutions. It's highly stable, soluble, and form metal chelate in combination with heavy metal or alkaline earth ions. It is a mechanism of action. It functions by forming a calcium chelate solution with the calcium ion of the dentine. Sometimes mechanism of action can be asked to you. And what are its studies have shown that EDTA is effective in softening the dentine. Irrigation with EDTA removes the inorganic part of the smear layer. The extent of demineralization by EDTA is proportional to the exposure time. EDTA has no deleterious effect when used clinically as an irrigating solution. It has no deleterious effect. Okay. How it is used, EDTA, by depositing a few drops into the pulp chamber with a syringe and then actually pumping the solution into the root canal with a fine root canal instrument. It is difficult to introduce a file into the canal due to intracanal calcifications or iatrogenic blockade. Then EDTA gel is of good use. It can be used and one should try to negotiate such canals with an instrument coated with EDTA gel. Okay. So we should, after pumping of EDTA into the root canal where there are calcifications, or if we are trying to negotiate the root canal, then After pumping of the EDTA into the canal, we should wait for at least 1 minute before attempting the instrumentation. Once the apical foramen has been reached and canal has been enlarged, the canal should be irrigated in the usual manner. So, what is the recommended regimen for usage of EDTA? It is to employ 17% EDTA for 1 minute as a final rinse, followed by sodium hypochlorite. So why it is there that we should use 17% EDTA for 1 minute as a final rinse, followed by sodium hypochlorite? Even we can leave the means we can do the sodium hypochlorite as a final rinse also, na? But that is the question. Okay, sodium hypochlorite is basically produce the oxygen, nascent oxygen, if we use it as final rinse, and this nascent oxygen can develop pressure in the periradicular region, which can lead to a horrible pain to the patient. So we should always use 17% EDTA as a final rinse, followed by sodium hypochlorite. Next comes the chlorhexidine digluconate 2%. That is the last irrigant which we are going to discuss, and it is a cationic bis biguanide which is utilized as an irrigating solution. And chlorhexidine 2%. Okay, is a cationic bis biguanide. The structure is not as that important. It is less toxic compared to other commonly employed irrigants. It should be kept in mind. As compared to sodium hypochlorite, it is less toxic. So mechanism of action, it has antimicrobial activity, and the specifically it should be said that it has an activity against the Enterococcus faecalis, which is one of the most common pathogen identified in the root canal, filled teeth, exhibiting clinical failure. The most important clinical characteristic of chlorhexidine is its substantivity, which refer to its sustained action within the root canal. Okay, this property imparts to its potential of preventing the bacterial colonization of root canal walls for prolonged period of time. This is chlorhexidine's mechanism of action. Then comes the limitations of chlorhexidine. It lacks the tissue dissolving ability. It does not remove the smear layer and hence can be employed in conjunction with other irrigants. EDTA has a special property of removal of the smear layer, where sodium hypochlorite also does not have that property of smear layer. So this is a comparison basically among all the three irrigants which we have discussed, that is sodium hypochlorite 17% EDTA and chlorhexidine digluconate 2%. Among three, sodium hypochlorite has a better tissue dissolving ability, whereas EDTA has a better smear layer removal property, whereas first one, that is sodium hypochlorite, does not have the ability to remove the smear layer, whereas EDTA has the best ability to remove the smear layer, and chlorhexidine also lack the ability to remove the smear layer, and hence chlorhexidine should be used along with some other irrigant like EDTA in order to remove the smear layer, and chlorhexidine also lacks the tissue dissolving ability. So that's why chlorhexidine is very less used, because it does not have both the properties which are important for an irrigant, that is tissue dissolving ability and removal of smear layer. So remember like that, what are the ideal requirements of an irrigant? So the ideal requirement should be antimicrobial activity, that chlorhexidine has, but it does not have the other properties like tissue dissolving and removal of smear layer. Whereas sodium hypochlorite has tissue dissolving ability but does not have removal of smear layer, and EDTA has the second one, that is removal of smear layer ability. Okay, so they should be used in conjunction. They cannot be used as an individually, because each one has some disadvantages, but most often the commonly used irrigant is sodium hypochlorite only. But if we use sodium hypochlorite, then the final rinse should be done compulsorily with 17% EDTA, otherwise it will leave a terrible effect to the patient, and the patient will come with a pain the next day and it will be very troublesome. Okay, and the important point which should be remembered is sodium hypochlorite and chlorhexidine should not be combined during irrigation regimen, as this would cause a precipitation reaction. And the other irrigants are there which are newly introduced, like MTAD, which employs a mixture of tetracycline isomer, citric acid and detergent, that is 2-in-80, as a final rinse to remove the smear layer. It is commonly employed after initial irrigation with 1.3% sodium hypochlorite, but further research is being done to validate its clinical effectiveness. So this is all about irrigants which are used in root canal instrumentation. Thank you.